Good morning, my neighbors. Welcome to another episode of that BYTTT. Before you take the trade, my goal is to go ahead and get you up to speed before the market opens. And I am your host, JD. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down there below. And I also have my one-on-ones open. I have links available so you can book your session ASAP, and it's totally free. And I have my charts, they are on sale. You got a $50 discount right down below. Say JD sent you. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to the charts. First thing we're going to break down is the fact that if you were watching my show from yesterday, you understand what these two lines represent. And we broke out. I think they really are trying to go ahead and continue these new highs. We only peaked out today up into that 422.75, but I think we're going to get above that. I think we're going to try to get to that 24,000 mark before it's all said and done. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see how that goes, because we had some very, very solid earnings along the way. And based on what I'm seeing, the market is trying to capitulate on that fact. So we'll see how that works out. And yeah, this really helps a portfolio when you're on the right side of the position. Anyways, let's go ahead and keep this going. We got oil over here. They had the oil inventory, which I'm going to break down in a little bit. And even though that they're ramping production, it seems like we get a nice little pullback here. They're probably going to go ahead and get back into this register, maybe like 63 before it gets another bounce. But anyways, if we go into what was the opening range yesterday, they kind of played around, built the base, made a W, pushing up, hence the W, got us here. I think that's what they're looking for. Can it reverse? Absolutely. And I'm not saying I want to see oil at lower prices. I'm just saying right now they just got a lot of stuff that's against them, and I'm borderline a oil bear. All right, let's go ahead and keep this going. We got gold. Gold is pulling back something nice, and in its opening range from yesterday, as I was breaking this down for Get Rich If You Try It, you could kind of see this was a nice little 25-point drop that is still giving gifts, right? So this one is probably going to go ahead and give us another spike down, and we'll see what happens there. This is still bullish overall because we still got this whole entire pennant that's still being formed here, and I think this is going to give a breakout to the upside before it goes to the downside. It's just taking its time before it gets there. The more narrow it does, the higher the probability that it's going to break out. Here's silver. Silver got up into that register I was looking for, but it did not register the $40 mark. That's what I've been looking for. So guess what? This is probably pulling back to go get some new friends so that way they can get to the 40. And if it gets to that 40, it's going to drag gold probably outside that box, and it's going to go ahead and continue to that upside. So but keep in mind that silver usually drags gold all over the place. And then this is the British pound. We spent 2 days breaking inside of this order block. And right now I'm looking for whatever pullback that happens here is just going to be relatively temporary, because with that close, they're going to try to get outside the block. They kind of did, gave a rejection, but I don't think that's, I think this is more before the London session type of action. In about 30 minutes, this is going to go ahead and pull back. Maybe I'll come back here to kind of see it, but I won't be surprised that we get a nice little spike somewhere inside of here and then come back inside the box to see if they can close inside of it. Other than that, that is our British pound trying to do that neutron dance. And then we got Bitcoin. I know. It got to 120 again. I know. I get it. Yeah, probably was like, JD, man, we sound like a Bitcoin hater yesterday. And I was not. I was far from it. So even though we got to that 120 and some change, and that we were still kind of holding it going into when I was breaking down in the morning, I think this thing is not going to do nothing until we get to 115. Show me some support at 115, and I'll show you 125. Let's go ahead and get into the Russell. The Russell closed inside of its box. I think there's going to be a spike up to that upside. Maybe start to get towards that 2400. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Jambalaya rice order block. It's not the best order blocks you want to kind of go into. But that said, if we can get the close above like 2300, 2315 or so. This should give us a nice little ride to the upside as they try to get into that 2500. And then we got the infamous, undeniable, the greatest, kind of like Ali, floats like a butterfly, stings your portfolio like a bee. But yeah, this bad boy right here is the dollar. And I think what they really are trying to do, they're trying to get into that 96.377, somewhere around that level. But I did point out overall that we were going to reject this. We did. I even marked this off with the fair value gap and everything else. We came right to 977, no, sorry, 97107, right around that area. This is what we were looking for. And now we go level to level. Next one will be probably just 96,377, or maybe just 95,794. Because when we get a lot of this information that's put in bearish to the dollar, we're going to get those rallies in the market. It's going to devalue the dollar even more. And then guess what? That's probably going to be an interest rate drop that brings us down to this level. And then when we recover and find a way to manage it, that's when we push back up. Look for the dollar to really test some of these things, or Trump firing Jay Powell and plugging in one of his cronies. One or the other. We'll see. Anyways, go ahead and pull out a pen and a pad because the news is coming fresh and hot off the presses. So first thing I want to go ahead and look at is the fact that we got the whole entire economic calendar coming through, and I want to just kind of run through this. You kind of see bullish for the dollar on their end, which makes it bearish for us. That's what you want to kind of see from the European side. Here is our oil inventory right here, and it looks like production is going up. That's what it looks like here. This is bearish for the dollar because of our inventories, because I guess we got to refill our inventory for the most part. They were expecting this, and it's a lot worse than expected. And then this one is a lot better than expected. So these stock oil trades, I guess, interesting. Because this one is a lot worse than what they anticipated in these two. So maybe we're starting to really slow down production. Let me read this a little deeper. Yeah, because negative ones, this is lower than that, but it's better than expected results. They expected 1.6. Oh, got you. Okay, I think I get, because this is gasoline stock change. So this is the refined part. So we got a lot of crude oil production that's not happening. So that makes this bullish. Very interesting. I'm going to dig into the oil a little bit further to understand what this report is, because I usually look at what's happening with the change here as far as the production, but the stock looks like it's having an effect to make this kind of rally oil to the upside. Distillate. So this must be another version of that, which is also bullish for that. But again, that's what I'm saying. We're going to have more oil and more fuel. So this is going to be really interesting in that effect. So let's just go ahead and push that forward. So that's what I'm looking for from oil. If you want to go ahead and, break down what that means, go ahead and put that in the comments. But generally what I look at is the production, and it was here and now it's much more positive. So then it was here and it was much more positive here. So I want to see these two, and it looks like we're getting that part of it up and wrapped up. So as the British market is starting to open, the London session I should say, start to open, we're going to get some news. We got some business confidence, and we're going to get some Euro PMI with the British pound. So that's in the next 2 hours or so. Consumer confidence is going to be on their end there, and then you got retail sales over in Canada. That's going to have a major effect inside of the market. If that turns into bullish for their dollar, I can see us coming down even further. And maybe Jay Powell doesn't have to actually lower interest rates, but he'll get himself fired probably. And then we got ourselves jobless claims right here. That's going to be very fun to kind of see. 8:30 is going to bring in some volatility. Maybe that's why we're drifting up, so that way they can just smack it down. But we got global PMI that's going to have a nice little effect as well. And then we got new home sales. That one I'm very curious about seeing if inflation is really. This is probably one of the metrics that J Powell's looking for, so that we can begin to lower interest rates. I want to see what that looks like. Is the demand up? Because if the demand's down, prices coming down, and they have no choice but to lower interest rates to kind of get the housing market off the ground. 30-year auction, a bill auction, sorry, 30-year mortgage and a bill auction is going to come into play, and then the Fed balance sheet. So around the close of the market, this is going to tell us even more of what the chances of the interest rates dropping. First thing I want to kind of break down is this. So energy sector has been lagging, but Wolf says this particular dividend payer is about to break out. So the ticker that they have is BTU. I like CNBC for the news. I have it. I do suggest y'all go ahead and go get it. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and look at this. So BTU, this is what the chart looks like. It's called Peabody Energy. And right now it's trying to make a W, a very ugly one. But with oil inventory looking the way it is, I don't trust that. Again, I'm not the most oiliest bears possible, but I would say I just think there's so much people coming for their lunch money, especially clean energy with like tickers like CCJ or something like battery companies like those that are building solid state batteries, hydrogen fuel cells. Like they're coming out with so many different other ways to generate energy. I think oil is going to get tested relatively well. It's in the upper register here, looking like it's already broken out, and probably going to need a pullback for a good entry. But for the most part, no, I don't see it from here. We'll go over to the weekly. Yeah, it's kind of high here, and then they got earnings that's coming up on July 31st. I don't know if I want to hold on to something for that. What's their dividend payout? 7 cents for $17. Not the greatest. I would love to see 10 cents to 20 cents, but it's like under 10 cents. So I think they just think that they're a growth company. That's when you see those type of actions. So we'll see. Let's see this monthly chart. It is, no, monthly chart is kind of, you know what? From the monthly standpoint, it probably looks a little bit better. Probably going to go ahead and continue this upside, but I do suggest that you buy some time, maybe like 3-4 months, maybe even 6 months before this actually starts to break out. And probably stop at like $24 or so. So that would be a little interesting. So keep that in mind. And then the last article that I have for y'all, not gonna spend too much on news. It is Citi initiates Celsius with a buy rating as U.S. energy drink market ramps up. So companies like Celsius I like, but this thing was being held down for the most part. I was trying to put I got still some of my old lines here. You know, I was trying to kind of see this thing looking like it was going to get into that 50s and 60s and everything else. It kind of liquidated a lot of people along the way to that downside. You can kind of see that. But looking at it from the daily, the reason why I had these lines there was because not all micro trends are created to break out. That's what this is an exercise of, right? So the first thing I want to kind of point out is we had an overall downtrend for the most part, right? And this downtrend is what was created. Looks like that's when I kind of gave up on that downside. Let's see. Very interesting. I picked that one. Maybe it was because there was something down here or so. I usually pick that. But anyways, it looks like we had that whole entire downturn was created off of here when it finally broke. So let's go ahead and see that. So you can kind of see when we have these downtrends, boom, made a lower low, came through, earnings gets announced, and then bang, spikes. That's your micro trend that is beating your major trend, but it's more of a fatigue of that. And you can kind of see it's been riding this trend line, and I can adjust along accordingly where necessary. So yeah, I could agree with that buy rating. I think a lot of institutional money came in when it got into that $20 level, and it's doubled in value. So I won't be surprised if people started to take their profits. That's probably why we're building this base here. Let's see what happens at this point. So I do agree with the buy rating on it. It's just again, you got to chart this out properly, because if this is what we're looking for, then that means it needs to follow suit with this trend line and not break through, and it already broke the deviation. So they announced this on the 23rd, and we had a kind of like a gap up on that, and now they're kind of baiting people to kind of get into this one. Can it curl up here? Absolutely. Can the weekly start to really take off? No, not really, because it already did all the work. It's the reason why it got out of here, so it needs a little bit of pullback. Could they be looking for liquidity? Very possibly, but this is another one from a monthly standpoint. It's probably going to be one of those where you're like, okay, get into Celsius, buy something that's all the way out to the boonies of dates, and then we probably can get into this fair value gap to $69. So that said, let's go ahead and get into our earnings cycle. We got quite. So let's go ahead and get into our earnings cycle. So today we got quite a few things that's coming in for earnings. The first one we're going to go ahead and break down. I'll probably check out the alert a little bit because London session is about to open soon. The Dow, it's got its earnings that's going to be reporting this morning. They're anticipating a loss of 173, which is a little bit bad. And it's a chemical company. Probably that guidance is what's bringing this bad boy down. Let's get to the daily. I don't think this is going to end relatively well. It looks like a bear flag to a certain extent, or a bear pennant. So if they miss on earnings after reporting this and don't give a surprise, this thing can really fall. Now, this is not in your tech sector, so this is one of those ones that there's a reason why we're here right now, because everybody's been pouring in tech. No one's getting into the chemicals company, chemical specialties, right? So this is going to be very interesting if this thing fails, because this thing can drop even further. And it does pay dividends, which is 70 cents for $30, which is not too bad, because you just want to see 30 cents to 40 cents. So they're probably trying to attract new investors in. Let me see what their shares floated to see if there's any growth chance. Oh yeah, there's growth chance here. So based on their guidance and everything else, this could be a little bit of a sleeper. Actually, let me go ahead and put this on my dividend side of my list, because I want to see what's going to happen with this. All right, got that on my list. So yeah, I want to see what happens, because I think this is going to possibly trap some bears. I think with that dividend price right there, they're waiting for earnings before they start to really pile in, and then we're going to get that nice explosion, especially with 700 million shares floated. So this is going to be very interesting. Let's go ahead and keep this going. We got VLO back into the energy space again. I'm not too much of a fan again. I will not give that up. It does pay dividends, but again, it's a $147 stock, which is not too bad. $1.13. That's a little solid. Let's see. Try to get into this gap. Almost filled the gap, and then it rejected. Maybe this is going to be that reversal. Let's see what their earnings say over here. Returns money to shareholders. They are very solid. UNP. It says Union Pacific, I believe. Yep, Union Pacific. They got their earnings this morning, and again, not a tech company, so this is probably going to be part of the sector rotations, especially the way this daily is looking. We're probably going to get a nice little spike up here, and it's one of those stable ones. Another one of them, $1.34, which is I want to see $2 for that one. I want to see $2. Very interesting company here. See if we can get a nice little rise, bounce off of this 800 EMA. I would say Union Pacific to 241. We'll see what happens there. Get there. All right. What else we got? Tonight is going to be NEM, Newmont. So this one is coming into an order block. That's why I didn't really announce too much of this, because I felt like since this order block is right there on his chest, it's probably going to go ahead and get pushed right back down. So I'm very curious on that. But yeah, nice little rejection off this area. Probably get a nice little push to the downside. That will be a great little response from the earnings, but then bounce right through. And then that's going to be your catalyst to continue to the upside. So look for this earnings tonight or throughout this day, the way the movement to kind of push this down. Now the next one is because I used to chart this thing. It's Intel. No, I don't know how to say this. Intel is how can I say this? I'm gonna be as nice as possible, right? Intel is at the bottom of the dirt. Is all it's missing is for people to kind of fill in the hole, and you got AMD and NVIDIA that's doing that. I think that this earnings of 1 cent is a little bit of an embarrassment for a company of its size. But again, this is someone that has to give a lot of dividends out to shareholders because there's 4 billion in the B of shares floated in this stock. I did an exercise with a good friend of mine, so I was trying to break this down. I was like, right now it's looking like it's putting in a diamond pattern to a bear flag to a I do not want to get off the ground to a it's not going to be $69 no time soon. Very, very interesting, especially coming off of 2018, going into 2020. And it's just innovation at this point. No one's like, I can't wait to get into Intel chips. I remember as a kid, if somebody handed me a laptop that had an AMD chip, it usually crashed. Now, it's the opposite. I'm actually operating this whole entire construct on all AMD built GPUs and CPUs. So very, very different dynamic. The market share is completely flipped at this point. Investors are scared to get into it. So I want this current trend to continue if it's going to go up. Hence the exercise I had with a good friend of mine. And you could kind of see that this uptrend is very, very struggling to hold. I don't know if it's short sellers that's in there or the fact that this micro trend, every time it gives a pop, they're taking it out. You talk about $1 each. It could be one of those Reddit type of trades in here because it just feels like they're just forcing it up and taking their dollar profits. And if you buy 1,000 shares, you just made $1,000. That's what it feels like to me. So, not saying stay away from it, just be cautious. Let's look at tomorrow's earnings. We got BAH, which is Booz Allen Holdings. I want to say this is the beverage company. Miscellaneous consumer specialties. No, this is digital. What am I thinking of Booz Allen? Maybe I'm thinking about Sam Adams. Maybe that's what it is. Bar the name Booze just sounds like something liquid. Engaged in provisions of management and technology consulting services. It offers analytics, digital solutions, engineering, and cyber expertise. Sounds like they're fighting for the space that's inside of like CrowdStrike, ServiceNow, and all of them in that space. So let's see what's going on here. So it's a $100 stock. Returns money to shareholders with $2 billion. That's not bad. Would love to see this at $1 being at that price. So maybe if they could raise dividends and make it more attractive. Anticipate 2.95 after reporting through 2.95 before. So they lowered guidance, hence the reason why I probably got a little lower here. And now they're kind of recovering. Maybe there's a surprise because this is a very nice W that is put right here, bang and bang, and they're going into the gap from this earnings. I would say if you want to play this, tomorrow's probably the day for you to play this before the earnings coming in. Sorry, not tomorrow. The morning is going to be the time we want to play this for the whole entire day today, because that tomorrow on Friday, this thing is probably going to go ahead and give its lunch money back as they fill this gap. AutoNation. This is the one that kind of been putting a little bit of a jab on some of the local dealerships down here in South Florida, as well as some of your Carvanas, companies like Vroom, all of them, because this was a very large company overall. And looking at this chart, it looked like what was supposed to be a bear flag on some smaller time frames. They may be attacking this 207. Let me see, is that all-time highs? I think I've been charting this. Yeah, that's all-time highs. Going to be very interesting. Does your earnings support what you're about to do right now? Returns $4 per share to shareholders and does not pay a dividend. Treated as a growth stock for the most part. So this area is probably going to be the one that's going to be very, very interesting as earnings drops. Do we get up here today? Do we get up into that register? If that's the case, then we might get a nice little push and fill in that gap. HCA, this one, you had the opportunity. You could have really put your foot a hold inside of the healthcare area, and it looks like shareholders are already backing out. Pays the dividends of 72 cents. Very expensive for just 72 cents. Anticipating that. And then you got 6.2 is what they're returning to shareholders, which is supposed to be higher on the guidance. Maybe that's why we got such a strong rally. But they are getting out of it 18 billion in revenue, which is same in line. So they probably was going to cut some jobs, make some adjustments in some of their assets, and they're going to generate some more money for their shareholders with the same amount of money that they have. Let's see how this turns out, because if they fail, this thing's probably going to drop even further, because I think a lot of this was built on the fact that UNH pulled back something vicious. And the last one is an energy sector, which is PSX, which is Phillips 66. We're looking for this thing to kind of come down as well, but this golden cross says otherwise. So look for Phillips 66 to kind of get a nice little push. It is returning money to shareholders, anticipated for 33 billion. It is a higher number than what was here, and they are trying to return money to shareholders. That's the key thing. Got to look at that. $1.20, not bad for the dividends. And this might be a little solid. So just keep that one in mind. As far as what's going to go on with the earnings cycle, I want to kind of go over a few of the tickers coming into next month. Like Roblox, I'm very curious on what's going to happen with their earnings when they report. This thing has been on a tear. They report towards the end of July, which is like normally the end of the early parts of August, so they kind of shifted their time. Their last earnings before they reported, what's that? Negative 32 cents, which is a surprise from the negative 39 cents. They anticipated negative 36 cents with a 1.2 billion revenue after giving 1.14. So a lot of growth there, and we want to see if that revenue continue. And then Clorox, this thing has been on the bottom of the dirt, and it broke through. When I drew this out a few weeks ago, if you played this, by all means, share the comments. Let me know if you did. I was looking for boom, boom, and break, and you can kind of see this is starting to really get. This is me drawing this from this far back, and they kind of did another leg lower just for a little bit, kind of like that sweep. And you can kind of see bing, 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 and then it just continued on to that upside. Again, Clorox does a lot more than cleaning supplies. And the last one is AMD. After all this semiconductor running, I would love to see what's going to happen with this earnings. They're going to report somewhere in August 5th, and they're going to go ahead and show money that's sent into shareholders at 47 cents, which is going to be half of what was here, and $7 million when they are anticipated to grow their revenue. So I want to see a surprise here, because you anticipate it's going to be half, but show me something more here. And I think a lot of it's priced in, so be careful if you're going to try to carry this for long periods of time. I think you can find a better price after the earnings. All right, so that said, that's pretty much our show. Go ahead and click the like, subscribe, and the bell button. I'm your boy JD, the great, the world-class analyst. I have my links for my charts down below if you are having trouble with charts, drawing out the charts. You want a complete chart with trading plan, go ahead and click the link down below and purchase your chart. Last is the 101. It's going to be over at the end of the month. I forgot what date exactly. So if you don't book before the end of the month, listen, I don't know when I'm going to do the next one. I take care of my kids and everything else. I'm not going on vacation until September, I believe. So I don't know if I'm going to do any pop-up where I just allow for some one-on-ones, but everything's going to be circled around BYTTT and Get Rich and Trying. So my goal is, if you want your one-on-one, catch me while I have time. After that, yesterday's price is not today's price. Just keep that in mind. All right, that said, But I had a lot of fun with y'all, and I appreciate all my subscribers. I'm at 310. If we can get to 500, that would be great. That way I could go ahead and get that last thing that's needed on YouTube. So go ahead and share it to your friends. Let them know that I bring extremely good content, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. You have a great day. Bye-bye.